The Child Psych podcast brings to you the top parenting and mental health experts in the world, designed to educate and inspire you with current research and concrete strategies that foster resiliency and healing in children and teens. Most importantly, we're here because we need to raise a generation of children who don't need to recover from their childhoods.
Hello everyone, I am Tammy.
And I am Tania.
And we're with the Child Psych podcast.
We are psychologists, we're the co-founders of the Institute of Child Psychology, and probably most importantly, mums. Today we are so incredibly excited to have Dr. Christina Bjorndal with us. Welcome, Dr. Chris.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So, Dr. Chris, I'm going to introduce you and then we've got so many questions for you, we'll jump right in. Dr. Chris is a licensed naturopathic doctor and established keynote speaker on how to regain your mental health from a naturopathic perspective. She is the co-founder of Natural Terrain, a naturopathic clinic in Edmonton, Alberta, and is regularly interviewed for print magazines and online resources as a leader in her field.
Yeah, I mean, we've had you at many of our conferences. We just keep having you back because I think it's so important that when we're talking about kids' mental health that we have a balanced perspective. That's so important. Tell us kind of a little bit more about you and like how you got into this work. We'd love to hear a little bit more about that we didn't already include in your bio there.
The really short story is that I came to this, I wasn't always a naturopathic doctor, and I came to this profession like many people do when they're looking for help and they sort of feel like they don't know where else to go and it becomes the last ditch effort. So that was what happened to me. And I had struggled with my mental health for many years, starting at the age of 5. And diagnoses such as depression, anxiety, an eating disorder, bipolar disorder type 1. I have had a few suicide attempts. So it was really through my own struggles that I needed to figure out another way to navigate my mental health other than just taking prescription medication upon prescription medication. So that's really the short story. And so I made a career change and here I am.
When our life's work comes from struggle, it's often rooted so deeply.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you've been there, and I think when you're a helping profession who's been through the fire, you know the way through, and I think that's your vulnerability in how you speak to mental health is part of the reason you're so successful in our field and advocating for other ways to treat mental health other than prescription medication or therapy as a standalone treatment.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, I think the thing is that, we need it all, right? Like I often explain to people that there's 4 big picture pieces to us, right? There's the physical, which is your option to take a pharmaceutical, which I'm not against. I want to be clear. I'm not against, but I believe that, minimum dose for maximum benefit for the shortest duration of time. And if the physical level is all you're going to look at, then I think you're going to miss 75% of the puzzle, which includes what you specialize in, which is looking at the mental and the emotional. And then there's this spiritual piece that often gets missed out by everybody, really. So I think, it has to be an all-encompassing approach. And you can get, even with myself, I started on the physical level just with nutrition and supplements and taking pharmaceuticals. But eventually, I had to take a look at my emotions and my reactivity and my thoughts and my inability to set boundaries and all of that, So it's just, we're complex human beings, and I think we need an integrated approach to address that complexity.
Dr. Chris, for parents listening to you today who maybe have a teen who's struggling with depression or anxiety, who've been in to see their GP, their doctor, if they came to see you as a naturopathic doctor, how would it look different? What would be different?
Well, I think the first big difference is that we spend a lot of time with people. It's not, our initial appointments are an hour or an hour and a half in length. And what we're really wanting to understand is on a deep level, what brought you to this place? Because even though the symptoms of depression and anxiety may be similar across the board, what brought you to experiencing those symptoms is different. So there is no two depression pictures that are exactly the same, because there's no two yous out there that are exactly the same. There's no two Tanyas, right? There's no two Christinas. So we really want to look at that individual piece, and then just understanding what could have disrupted, we call it the vital force within, and how can we restore that person back to balance. And so we're just looking at all these pieces, starting with the foundation being the nutrition, which is it's important. You have to understand that if you don't put the right gas in the tank, this car here, the engine, the brain, isn't going to run properly. So nutrition is first and foremost. It's really an important piece, and we can talk more about that.
Tanya and I are both moms, and we've got 5 kids between us, and I know there's tons of parents listening right now. So what you put in your stomach can affect your mood. Can you please explain this to parents? Like, when they're feeding their kids, like, what do they need to keep in mind? Like, what has that got to do with depression and anxiety? This is stuff parents need to know.
It's huge.
It's huge, because we've got so many kids who are depressed and anxious.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one big thing people don't understand is you make more serotonin in your gut than you do in your brain. And if you don't have that ability to make it, so then hopefully what should be going off in your brain right now is, well, where does it come from? Well, it comes from food. It comes from specifically an essential amino acid that none of us can make. You have to get it from your diet. And lo and behold, the only one I was deficient in was tryptophan, which goes to make serotonin. And that's a longer conversation about how you get to serotonin from tryptophan. But the other one as well, dopamine, is also derived from an essential amino acid called phenylalanine. So same thing. If you're not eating these foods that contain these amino acids, you're already at a deficit, because you're not even going to be making the main fuel that your brain needs.
Can you explain to viewers what dopamine is for? Like, we know what it is, but can you tell them what it's for?
You bet. So when I mentioned that overview of the 4 areas, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, on the physical level, what we want to understand is there's 3 macro systems in your body. So you have your neurotransmitters, then you have your hormones, and then you have your organs of detoxification. So when we talk about the gut microbiome, we're referring to the organs of detoxification. When we're talking about dopamine and serotonin, those are neurotransmitters that your brain makes. And dopamine is really important. It's the quick fix that you're all getting as soon as you get a notification on your phone, right? It's the reward-seeking hormone. It's the attention or neurotransmitter, pardon me. It's the attention-seeking one. It's often involved in these more challenging mental health conditions like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. But it's also super big, right? Which is become, dare I say, an epidemic. I mean, it's really a big problem, along with depression and anxiety too. Mm-hmm. And there can be depression components to dopamine too. So this is an important point, because if you start a medication, often with children, if they go in depressed, they're going to walk out with a medication called a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Generally, if that's the right macro system, if we're addressing the right macro system, you should feel better. You should feel a little bit better. But if you don't, it should be telling you a couple things, that it's either the wrong neurotransmitter, it's the wrong macro system, or it's not even on the physical level, right? So the key message I guess I do want to leave people with here is to understand that there's an explanation for what your child is going through. And they really, it's not because you have, so yes, you may have a deficiency in dopamine or serotonin or GABA, or, the list can go on, but we have to ask these key questions. Well, how do we make those things, right? If we're going to trust that we're infinitely designed and the body has wisdom, maybe we just need to, we're not giving it the right messages or support to do what it knows how to do, right?
So what kinds of foods really create that healthy gut so we can get appropriate amounts of serotonin and dopamine to help keep us motivated and to keep us out of depression? If we're really focusing on like what we're putting into our kids' bellies, essentially. Mm-hmm. What would you say? Like, where do parents start with that? What do they need to analyze?
Yeah. So the first thing is, first we want to take a step back though and make sure that we understand what may have disrupted the gut microbiome in the first place. What's been the use of antibiotics, even if you've just taken one. And I'm not saying not to take it, but if you do take it, we want to make sure we restore and replenish with some of these foods that I'm going to mention. Mm-hmm. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. And then in terms of the foods, so amino acids come from protein. And now I was a vegetarian, but I was not a good vegetarian. Okay. There was not a lot of vegetables in my vegetarian diet. It was mostly carbohydrates, and carbohydrates equal the same molecule. No matter what carbohydrate you're eating, they all equal glucose, and glucose is sugar, and sugar is very hard on us, very hard. Now, again, different forms. So there's a difference between table sugar and eating quinoa, but at the end of the day, it does get broken down to that. Quinoa is a higher protein containing carbohydrate. So I will say that. So you do want to be looking at what's the protein. Now, a lot of people are moving into things like keto and paleo, but also at the other end of that extreme, people are becoming more open to vegetarianism and being vegan and everything in between. So to me, it's just really important to make sure that you're eating a balanced diet and you're not totally excluding one whole food group, because each of these food groups from a macro perspective are important. So just think of things like basically if you're shopping around the perimeter of your grocery store and not going up and down the aisles, you're going to serve your family so much better than if you're not eating from around the aisles and only eating up and down.
What I love about that, Dr. Chris, is it puts the power back in the hands of families. And I think so often it feels as if our mental health has been taken away from us. We need to go to somebody to fix it, where it's like, actually, there are things that we can start to do at home to really enhance the well-being of everybody in our family.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is you say, like, as much as we can ingest things that could be found in their natural form, like we talk about whole foods is a big one. What about this idea of just because I've been reading more, looking like the adrenal stress connections, of course, we offer, and it is not taught by me, to be clear, but they talk a lot about the idea of like fiber is important, the prebiotic and a probiotic. Can you speak to that? Like I know that can be important in terms of serotonin. I think I could be wrong.
Yeah. So for what people don't know what probiotics are, so basically when we talk about the gut microbiome, what we mean is there's bacteria. We have a lot of bacteria. We have more bacteria in and on us than we have cells in our body. You have, as an adult, you have about 3 pounds of bacteria in your digestive tract alone. So that's a lot of bugs that are in you. And these bugs, they also want to survive, and they need things to survive. So it's all about balance, always in life. It really does come down to being in balance. And if your microbiome is not in balance because you've taken too many antibiotics, or you've taken too many prescription meds, or you've drank 10 cups of coffee today, haven't drank any water. I mean, I know kids are not doing this, but what kids are doing is they're drinking a lot of pop, right? They're drinking a lot of juice. So sugar is detrimental to the healthy bacteria, and it feeds a problematic one called candida, and that is really can be disruptive to us, because then we think we're addicted to sugar or we need sugar, but it's really the organism within you that's causing you to, it sends chemicals actually to your brain. It's like you're possessed in a sense, and because it wants to survive. What's any organism's goal? Any organism, whether it's a virus, fungi, bacteria, human, cat, or dog, its whole goal is to survive, right? So anyway, what you asked the question is, what are some of these foods? So I just want people to understand that there are some foods that contain healthy bacteria. A common one that people know about is yogurt. The problem with yogurt is if you're buying one that contains sugar or sweeteners, there is no good bacteria really left in that. It was made it cannot be made without bacteria, but once you add sugar to it, you negate the good bacteria. So buy yogurt that is plain. So the other good foods with healthy probiotics are sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, kefir, miso, tempeh, there's tofu, right? There's lots of them. And you have to be creative with your kids. I know that as I'm reading this list, I'm thinking my parents are going to say, well, my kid's not going to eat that. Well, have they tried? Have they tried? And also, tofu is very bland. It doesn't have any taste.
Very versatile. You can do a lot with it. You can dress that up.
You can dress it up big time. So they wouldn't even know. Okay, one thing about that, you have to understand that that soy is a genetically modified food. And so you really do need to eat soy in the organic form.
Many families have struggled in 2022. At the Institute, we want to walk alongside you into 2023 to ensure it's a year full of connection, love, and growth. For the month of December only, we will be offering 50% off of all of our pre-recorded courses. These courses cover an array of topics pertaining to children's mental health and wellness and are packed with the latest research, tools, and strategies. Go to icphelps.com for more information.
Dr. Chris, the other area that I know that you speak a lot about is the impact of stress from a naturopathic perspective. Could you talk to us a little bit about that as we look at it from a holistic perspective?
Yeah, so stress. So we want to understand that there's two main branches to your nervous system. So sympathetic or stress, and then parasympathetic or relaxed. And we've been talking about food and digestion. In order to talk about food, you got to talk about digestion. And this is a big pet peeve of mine in the health industry, is that everyone is talking about food, but no one's talking about the state in which you're in when you're eating the food. And food, so digestion is a parasympathetic process in the body. We have to be in a relaxed state in order for us to fully digest and absorb the nutrients, in order to make these neurotransmitters that we're talking about and the hormones. Yeah.
Really? I did not know that. Like, I know, and so many families, if we think about we're taking our kids, like, we're like, oh, they've got basketball practice and they have dance, we have this, and we're like inhaling food while we're breathing very fast, and we're in a sympathetic nervous system, like the gas is going. And so you're saying is when we ingest food like that, like, we're not absorbing the nutrients?
Not as well.
Oh,
fascinating.
Wow. That is really interesting. No, I had no idea.
And then what happens? You have gas, you have bloating, you have constipation, you have heartburn, you have indigestion. We have all these things and we wonder. So we want to back it up a step. And you made a key point there. So again, the state in which you're eating is really important. But even before that, when does digestion start? It actually starts with the sense of smell. Sends a signal to the brain that goes through the vagus nerve, which a lot of talk nowadays about polyvagal theory. Vagus nerve sends a signal to the stomach, hey, get ready. Food's going to be coming. But when we go through that drive-through and we open the container and down the hatch we go, the stomach is like, whoa, vagus nerve, what the heck? You on strike or something? Like, what's going on? Right? And then it's like a lump in our stomach for some. And that, again, contributes to all those other consequences that I was just mentioning. So Michael Pollan talks about how we've given up 2 hours a day for screen time. And what have we given up? We've given up cooking, like making cooking a family affair, and we've given up exercise. So if everyone looks at their lives, I'm pretty sure I would be hard pressed for someone not to agree with me that they've given up cooking for one of those two things. Or as parents, we've all given up because we're running our kids around to all these events, right? And I'm not saying not to put your kids in sports. I am one of those parents as well, but I am also saying organize your life so that your kids have time to rest and digest before they go out and be stressed.
That's a great way to remember it. We're really big on play with the Institute, but a lot of parents are like, I don't have time to play with my kid. And lately I've been taking a look at some work that would substantiate, as long as you're in parallel process with your child, like cooking with them, doing chores together as a family, gardening together, that children don't need you to play with them as much. Like they'll still play, they need play, but you don't need to play with them. It's when they participate. So like when we're talking about like cooking with our children and they're smelling and they're participating and connecting, we're keeping their gut healthy too, which is going to impact their mood and then their sleep.
I would say that is play. Like, make that playful. There's no way that gardening is super important to get your hands in the soil. Before this whole pandemic, the narrative was, hey, we're too clean. The narrative was, get in the dirt.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That whole narrative took a major, like that, you don't hear that at all. Now it's like, we've gone completely the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious to see the health consequences of these children under the age of 6 from overdoing it in this other direction. Again, we have to have some balance.
I do a lot of research on screens and how we should be talking to our kids about screens and how it needs to be an ongoing, evolving conversation from the time that they're very, very little. And so there's lots of focus on how do we talk to kids about screen? How do we talk to kids about consent from really young? But as you're talking to me today, it's an equally important discussion is how do we talk about holistic well-being from a very young age and then let that conversation just evolve with our children. And we do it offhanded, like, oh, don't eat too much candy, but we never really get into it with our kids.
Well, I don't think we explain the sort of the whys, right? We might say, don't eat too much candy, but we don't say why.
No. And kids want to know why. They want to understand. Like, no one likes to be just bossed around for no particular reason. Like,
right.
Kids love if you have little ones, well, why? Why do we do this? Why do we do this? And, because I said so. That doesn't fly with kids. Like, we'd love it would fly, but it doesn't, especially if you've got really inquisitive kids. And I think it's really important. Like, when we talk about screens in my family, we talk about dopamine. We talk about cortisol. We talk about, like, what happens when we disconnect from parts of the brain, like, from 4 on. So what I think as Tanya is saying is that same conversation, that same depth needs to be brought into, like, what do we put in our stomach? Like, what feeds our body and our brain? Sleep is another one. And I think this is a hot. I mean, sleep is so hard. And I think we know that in the last 20 years, we're sleeping an hour less than we did, kids in particular, which is to their detriment for their cognitive functioning and their emotion regulation. Can you tell us more about sleep and how that impacts mental health, like from a holistic perspective?
So I do have a whole chapter in my book about sleep, and sleep could be a whole podcast in and of itself. I often get asked, hey, Chris, what's the, like, I'm only going to do one thing. So what's the one thing, right, I'm going to do for my health? And I'm always hard pressed between the foundational 3, which is nutrition, sleep, and exercise. We have this diurnal rhythm, and the 2 hormones that are involved in that are cortisol and melatonin. And melatonin is a sleep hormone, and it's actually derived from something we've been talking about already, which is serotonin. So not to get too biochemical, but the pathway in the body basically is tryptophan, 5-HTP, serotonin, melatonin. And so we want to make sure we're doing what we can to support melatonin production. And cortisol is a hormone that comes from our adrenal glands, and it's necessary. It kind of gets a bad rap, cortisol, and it's because it's produced whenever we're under stress or in that sympathetic state. The body thinks that it has to fight or freeze or fawn or is in fear. And so whenever we're in one of those F states, we are in a sympathetic state and most likely then overproducing cortisol, which you can only put your foot on the gas of the pedal of the car maxed out for so long, because then you're going to run out of gas, right? Your car can only go at 100 kilometers an hour when it's only supposed to be going 50 for so long. And that's what happens to the body. And when you overproduce cortisol, you inhibit melatonin, and sleep can escape us. So that's for people who have a hard time falling asleep. That's one of the issues with sleep. There's many issues with sleep. One of them is difficulty falling asleep. The other is once you fall asleep, you have difficulty staying asleep. And another issue is, just not sleeping at all. And then another issue is not waking up, not getting out of bed. I mean, that's depression for you. But depression can have either one of those, insomnia or any of those pictures actually can be impacted with sleep.
What does sleep do for us? What can you explain? And what happens if we don't get enough? What's going on there? What mechanisms are at play there?
Yeah, I mean, sleep is really when everything is, your body's just getting its rest and its opportunity to repair and digest and to basically just process the day, to deal with. So lots of development is happening. And so sleep, all the connections that have been made. I mean, a child isn't born with a fully developed brain, let alone immune system, let alone reproductive system. Nothing's fully developed, right? We're not fully developed till we're 25, which is another reason why I think these devices are such a sin. Should have a license, not allowed to use it till you're 25 because it affects your brain.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you bring back to sleep. You talk about melatonin as part of sleep. The darkness releases the melatonin so you can go into sleep. But if you're sitting in front of a screen and that blue light's cascading in, it's preventing that melatonin from.
Yeah. Well,
released.
it can be a double-edged sword with that. It's the blue light that can block melatonin, because when the melatonin production, so the pineal gland is what's involved in regulating our circadian rhythm, and blue light can impact that. But also when you're looking at those screens, what are you looking at? And if it's something that's stimulating or alarming or shocking, you're sending cortisol, you're producing more cortisol, which is going to further suppress melatonin.
Dr. Chris, what I'm hearing from you is that when our kids don't sleep, when they're watching screens right up until bedtime, that they don't have that space to restore, rejuvenate, renew, that their bodies aren't getting that deep rest that's needed through all of those different developmental stages.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. So for our parents listening today are going, sleep is a massive issue in our house. And usually I see it's a family issue that often our kids sleep mirrors our parents' sleep. Where do they start? What's one space that they can start from?
So I think the best place to start would be to put your phones away pick a time, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock max. And you don't look at them. And do that see if you can have that as a family commitment. And do something together. So you talked about play earlier. So play a game or get outside. And again, to restore circadian rhythm, one of the best things you can do is expose your eyes, which will then send the signal to your brain to help restore the circadian rhythm with the pineal gland, sunrise and sundown. Mm-hmm. How you start your day is how you live your day. And how you start your day should mirror how you finish your day. If you're starting your day picking up your phone and you're finishing your day picking up your phone and you have sleep issues, I would say set down your phones and get back to nature, right? Connect with the planet.
It's kind of that rhythm of the earth, like
rhythm.
Getting back in touch with those natural kind of cyclical pieces.
Kids need, the best thing you can do for your adrenal glands is rhythm and routine. Mm-hmm. So going to bed at the same time, getting up at the same time. A sign of a well-oiled machine, if you will, is someone who can fall asleep and if we're talking children, under the age of 10 really should be in bed by 8. And then 8 to 16, I'm going to say 9:30. Yep. 16 to 18, even still, I would argue you need to be in bed by 10. There's a lot of disconnection happening. Even though we think we're more connected because of technology, we actually are more disconnected than we've ever been. And I think parents really need to understand that children crave and need for their survival your attunement and your attachment, and for you to show up for them authentically. When you're sitting watching them at their swimming lessons or hockey lessons, watch them. They want to be seen.
Yeah.
There's this one mom, her son was depressed, not doing good at all. And he was also a little obstinate, right? A little defiant, didn't want any help, right? Wasn't going to see a therapist, wasn't going to see a doctor, not doing anything, just in his room, not living his life. And so she just made a sandwich for him every day. Showed up with a sandwich. Sometimes he ate it, sometimes he didn't. So she's just beating herself up. I'm not doing enough, as we all do as moms. And anyway, he did turn the corner, and then she asked him, what happened? How did you turn the corner? And he said, Mom, that sandwich showing up every day.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gave me hope, gave me something to live for. So never doubt, And I always get emotional telling that story because, I've been there, right? So never doubt the impact as a parent that you're having. But at the same time, be the impact on your children.
We have so much more to share with you at ICP, and whether you're looking for parenting support or you're a professional looking for strategies to help children who are struggling with their mental health, we have the answers you're looking for. At ICP, we offer a unique membership program that gives you access to over 60 accredited online courses and past conference workshops offered by the top experts on the planet, and also provides a community platform where you can connect with like-minded professionals and parents, sharing ideas, resources, as well as advice from the ICP team of professionals. You can access our courses and workshops through your desktop or through our app, offered exclusively to our members. Please go to icphelps.com to start your journey with us today.